Another of Washington's challenges was how to deal with Britain and France, who were engaged in a war. To understand this challenge, you need a basic understanding of the French Revolution. France had historically been a monarchy, and its population of roughly 27 million was divided into three estates. The first estate was made up of the clergy, and the second estate made up of the nobility. These first two estates made up roughly 2% of the population, yet they owned roughly 35% of the land, and they did not have to pay the taille or tax. The third estate was the commoners, and was mostly made up of peasants, but also consisted of the bourgeoisie or middle class. Poor harvests and increasing unemployment led to a financial crisis, and in 1789, the Estates General, France's parliament, would meet for the first time since 1614. The Estates General allowed for each of the three estates to have one vote, so when the third estate demanded changes to the tax system, they were outvoted 2-1. Representatives from the third estate declared themselves a national assembly and sought to draft a new constitution for France. Upon being locked out of their meeting hall, they went to a nearby indoor tennis court and took an oath not to disband until a new constitution was written. This is aptly known as the tennis court oath. So, King Louis XVI did not approve of the actions the Third Estate was taking, and he was prepared to use force against them. His plan was foiled when a mob of Parisians stormed the Bastille, an armory and prison. King Louis lost control over his royal troops and effectively lost his power. Up to this point, the French Revolution is a story of the oppressed masses rebelling against the monarchy so that they could establish a republic. In fact, the National Assembly even wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, which, like the Declaration of Independence, outlined the basic rights and liberties that all men possess. King Louis, who was still refusing the demands of the National Assembly, was essentially kidnapped by thousands of women and brought to Paris from Versailles. The National Assembly gained power, took over the Catholic Church, and wrote a new constitution. This new constitution made many changes to limit the power of the monarchy, but it did not go as far as some had hoped. A more radical group emerged, called the Paris Commune, who wanted to take the revolution further by giving all adult males the right to vote. They took control from the National Assembly, and then things got crazy. A national convention was called in which legislators would decide the fate of King Louis. Two groups emerged at the convention: Girondins, who wanted to keep the king alive, and the Mountain, a more radical group hailing from Paris who wanted to execute the king. They voted. The Mountain won, and on January 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI was beheaded on the guillotine. From there, a group of 12 men, known as the Committee of Public Safety, gained power. Its leader was Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre was obsessed with creating a republic of virtue which would emphasize citizenship and reason and eliminate Christian influences in France. The Committee of Public Safety set up revolutionary courts to try enemies of the revolution. What followed was a reign of terror in which 40,000 people were killed, 16,000 by the guillotine. The violence was so bad that the streets ran red with blood. During this time, European monarchies feared revolution spreading to their countries, so a coalition consisting of Austria, Prussia, Spain, Portugal, the Dutch Republic, and Britain waged war on France. Their goal was to end the revolution and restore a monarchy. So that brings us back to Washington. Americans were conflicted with who they would support in this war between France and Great Britain. On the one hand, France was the ally who helped the Americans win their independence from Britain. Also, many, including Thomas Jefferson, still supported the French Revolution because it represented the destruction of a monarchy in favor of self-government. On the other hand, the French Revolution had many aspects that are more consistent with anarchy than any form of government. Washington did not want to entangle the United States in the affairs of Europe and issued a proclamation of American neutrality, basically saying the U.S. would not support either side. As he would soon find out, this would create a challenge of its own.